I think this is one of the most reckless gambles with a prestigious franchise that I can remember. I think putting all of your eggs in the basket of a guy who, again, if we just take him at his word, does not know if he's going to play football, is seemingly having a really, and I say this with genuine empathy, a trying off season from a personal perspective. He didn't tell us on McAfee what he was going through, but he made it clear something substantial either happened or is happening in his life that makes him, takes his attention away from everything, who is operating exclusively on his own timeline, and who now, I also know he did say on McAfee, he's made a clear play for $10 million, but at this point, when it comes to the Steelers, can probably ask for any number because they don't have, it is just, I'm a gambler, and it feels wildly reckless to not have a viable backup plan.
I don't know. Tell me which quarterback you would rather have besides Aaron Rodgers. So would you rather have Russ?
No, they could. Coach, we just had a draft.
Well, I'm just saying, would you rather have Justin Fields?
What I would personally rather have both of them.
Okay, so they.
But they were there and they decided not.
But
the Jets had Aaron and decided on Justin. So
well, the Jets have made a lot of good decisions over.
Well, the Steelers haven't made many at quarterback lately.
Well, I mean, but there's two Jets quarterbacks that are now starting for NFL franchises that they moved on from. So let's not use them as the bar of evaluating quarterbacks. But so then let's go down the line. So they couldn't get. They didn't have the first overall pick in the draft, so they were out on Cam. And then you go down the line, Jackson Dart, there's mixed feelings on that. Chuck, there's obviously mixed feelings on that. And then you keep going, and with Shedeur went in what? The fifth round. So he went in the fifth round. Obviously, a lot of teams that needed quarterbacks passed on him over and over again. So what's the reckless part that you see here? So Mason Rudolph as a starter in Pittsburgh, we may not want to disregard this, but he was 8-4-1 as a starter when he was in Pittsburgh. That's his record. Okay, so you're telling me that Shedeur Sanders is a better bet than Mason Rudolph? You're telling me that waiting for Aaron Rodgers at this point is bad business? How do we know they're out of the Kirk Cousins situation? So if all your choices,
would be fine with me.
Well, I'm just saying, if all your choices are not great, why not draft to improve your overall team, knowing the quarterback isn't going to be a position of strength regardless of who you get, so that you have the best possibility to win games in spite of that position, because all the answers are just,
Okay. Mangini, wow, this was his best take. And all the time that I've been watching Mangini talk on either the Herd, First Things First, this was, he just took everything that I was going to say, which is always a bummer, because then it kind of backs me in a bit of a corner. But yeah, 100%. And I've defended Aaron Rodgers over the last, X amount of months, over the last year or two. And I've ripped Aaron Rodgers. So, I always go back and forth with Aaron. I always call it the way how I see it. And, yeah, I get it. I would rather have, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you want Aaron just to sign, get over with it, and let's go. But you don't really know the conversations that they're having back and forth. You really don't know. You don't know what degree of confidence the Pittsburgh Steelers have. But this idea, right? Like, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm good on Justin Fields. I'm good on Russell Wilson. I'm good on all that. Let's get those guys out now. We tried that. It didn't work. We have the opportunity to get Aaron, which will absolutely, undeniably, 1,000% be an elevation at quarterback over those guys. Okay? Aaron Rodgers can still sling it. It's just a fact. And it's so funny that Nick wants to use the New York Jets as a reference point when the New York Jets have literally done nothing. Nothing. And, I want to see the Jets do something, okay? I grew up going to Jets games, I'm not like a Jets fan, but like my uncle had season tickets growing up. So it's like, I'm not hating on the Jets. It's just the reality. They've been, a disaster of a franchise, disaster of an ownership. That has not been the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers also haven't won a playoff game in 10, I forget the exact timeline, but a long time now. And so they've been underperforming as well, but they understand stability, almost to a detriment, right? Almost to a fault. But I have no problem with them waiting on Aaron Rodgers. If they get Aaron Rodgers, it gives this team a little bit of a juice, gives this team a little bit of energy. Again, I'm not going to say, hey, no one better, they're going to win the AFC now that they got Aaron. I'm not going to jump on that. I think considering the draft and getting someone like a DK Metcalf. And I think maybe if you have Aaron, if Aaron can actually be just like 80% of what he was, I think that calms the offense down, the wide receiver room, the everything with Pickens and DK and the offensive coordinator Arthur and all of that type of stuff. I think that could be like a calming factor in that regard. But Aaron will always bring some degree of drama, some degree of attitude, and it'll be just a little contentious, especially with the media and whatnot. So you always have to kind of account for that. But I'm more interested in that. And if Aaron doesn't go that way, then I'm totally fine with the Pittsburgh series. Be like, we'll run it back with Mason Rudolph. And I ripped that initially, being like, Mason Rudolph, like, what are you doing? But the more I think about it, it's kind of like, it's predicted that next season the quarterback draft is supposed to be like legit, right? It's supposed to be almost more reminiscent of what we saw last season when we had a million quarterbacks go. And so that could be where the series are. If Aaron Rodgers plays and they win and they're successful, then it's like, all right, man, you're successful. You win. No complaints there. And if they don't get it, Mason Rudolph has a game, a season where he wins like 8 or 9 games, and right, you still get your, winning record, your winning season record, keep going and all of that. Then I think potentially you truly kind of bet the farm and go all in and try to get a quarterback. Like if you have to trade up, you got to give up all the picks, all the trade. Again, it's hard to predict exactly what would need to be done and where you would be in the draft order and what other quarterbacks are available. But then I would. In what would it be, the 2026 draft, I suppose. You just go all in and you say, yep, we're going. We're going for it, right? We're going for it. We're gonna officially do everything we can to get over this quarterback hump type thing. Unless another situation opens for you, what that is, no idea. For all I know, the Dallas Cowboys want to get rid of Dak, or who knows. Again, probably not. But I'm trying to think like real fast. Are there any of these other like quarterbacks who could, right? I don't know. Maybe Sam Darnold gets injured and now Jalen Milroe takes over and now he's the starting quarterback and now the Seattle Seahawks are, all right, we got to get this guy out. Like there's always random situations that could technically arise that are, pretty hard to see. But, the more I think about it, because I keep talking about this for a lot of these teams, look at these teams through a 2-year window right now. They tried to kick the tires for the Russell Wilson and the Justin Fields. It just wasn't good enough for them to continue forward with that. That's their conclusion. That's the conclusion that they drew. That's fine. We could say it was the wrong conclusion. I don't know. But if that's their conclusion, I'm at least okay with that, right? I think like if they weren't sure, then they ran it back again. That would almost make me feel more uncomfortable. So at least I can kind of tip my hat to like, no, this was their evaluation. This was their conclusion, and they're moving on. And they didn't then reach and be desperate in the draft and just try to get another quarterback in like the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round just because like, hey, we got to have someone, like, let's do it. Like they didn't play that game. And they didn't get Shedeur just for the sake of getting Shedeur. They do not believe in Shedeur Sanders as a starting quarterback. That's their evaluation. And, I can be okay with that. I can be okay with that. And maybe Mason Rudolph was a late bloomer, just like a Sam Darnold, right? Like maybe he has a resurgence. And if he does, again, awesome situation. Do I think that Mason Rudolph's going to turn into like a 14, 15 win quarterback? Probably unlikely. I hope he does, because that just continues to be an awesome story and kind of shows you that not all these quarterbacks need to be like amazing and brilliant by year like 2 or something. So like that would be kind of cool full circle moment for Mason Rudolph. Again, not necessarily my prediction, but I think it'll probably be a kind of a pretty standard Pittsburgh Steelers season if they have Mason Rudolph as their quarterback, which can be frustrating. That's the thing. If you're a Steelers fan, you're kind of like, how do we get past this? How do we stop with this? How do we find our quarterback? How do we get our Jaden Daniels? How do we just get our Bo Nix, man? Like, how do we get there? And you either go through the season with Mason Rudolph or you get Aaron Rodgers. You see what that looks like. And then next year, I really think it is, again, it's hard to predict exactly the draft order and like how many true quarterbacks there'll be next in the draft. But again, it's widely predicted that is going to be like a really, really solid quarterback draft. And I think maybe in that draft in 2026, you just take a big swing. And if you need to, because for all I know, you only win like 6 games, 7 games, and now you're already top 10 in the draft. And now you don't have to give up anything. You just draft the quarterback that's there for you. So yeah, if you're looking at this on a 2-year window, I think that's pretty good. And I agree with what Mangini, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to have a top quarterback in the NFL. So Don't try to just draft one and just hope for the best. Hope you can find, some hidden gem in the 4th round or something. Continue to build this roster. Continue to use your picks wisely. And then you move forward with that. On the short term, I can see it being frustrating, and I get it. On the long term, it's the right play. But I do look at the Pittsburgh Steelers on this 2-year window where it's like, within these next 2 years, something does have to change. Something does have to change. But that's where bringing in an Aaron Rodgers does at least kind of give you like something. It does give you a little bit of juice. It does give you this feeling of kind of like, okay, let's see what Aaron does in an organized culture. The stability of the. I mean, technically, the Packers obviously have been a very stable franchise, but him coming to Pittsburgh would be just very solidified. There is a little bit of goofiness going on with Green Bay because of the no ownership and whatnot, and having Mike McCarthy and then LaFleur, like there was a little bit of up and down there, and I just think like this would be the first team that Aaron goes to where like he's just the quarterback, right? Like he's just the quarterback. He's not the celebrity. He's not the man. He's just the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's Mike Tomlin and down, right? Like that just is what it is. And I think as long as he settles into that, I think there could be a lot of success. But like that's why I always said in a lot of my earlier Aaron Rodgers videos, what it really comes down to for me is what are the conversations that you're having with him? How much do you trust him? How authentic do you think he's being? Because you're having an interview, right? It's just like, are you guys talking like men? Are you having a real honest conversation with each other? When he says, hey, I honestly really don't know what I want to do you feel that? Or is he saying like, no, I'll sign with you? And then he's kind of off to the side being like, yeah, I don't know, I might retire. Like, we don't really know how the true conversations are unfolding. Are they talking on the phone? Are they sending each other texts, emails? Like, you just don't really know. That's how I would make my decision based on anything. And if we want to say, is it a mistake to rely on Rodgers? Like, if you feel like he's being truly, truly authentic and you're having real honest conversations with him and he's like, hey, I really am going to sign with you just for my own peace of mind. I just want to make sure that I don't sign with you and then you now go draft Shador Sanders 1st round. Like and also I'm dealing with some other stuff. Like again, you just don't know. So I will trust the Pittsburgh Steelers in this way because even though they've come up short many years recently and they haven't done a great job of replacing their quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, I do trust them as a franchise and as not being a disaster. They're not trying to shoot for the moon. They're not trying to pull Jerry Jones type stuff. They're not run like Dan Snyder and the original Commanders. This is a well-run franchise making smart decisions and consistent decisions, which is why they're consistently good. Just haven't been able to be great or elite in recent years. And so that's why I'm not going to use a team like the New York Jets who are firing coaches and taking these weird chances and giving Justin Fields, what do you get, $20 million a year, like $40 million? Like they're the team that's all over the place. They're the franchise that's all over the place. And I will never use as another franchise that's clearly poorly run as a barometer as what you should do. Colin pointed this out, and it was so true about the Jets. Like the owner was saying how amazing this team was and how great this team is constructed, et cetera, and then fired the very GM that constructed said team. It's like, that doesn't really make sense. So don't use them as a frame of reference. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Do you think it's a mistake to rely on Aaron Rodgers? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.